And today, what I'm going to talk about is going to be dehydration. Now, I know it's getting summertime in a lot of places, and that means being outside, doing yard work outside, exercising outside, going to the beach, just hanging out, trying to get that tan. I, of course, do not need a tan because of what race I am. So, anyway, the point is if you're going to be outside, then you might get dehydrated, and that is a real issue, especially if you have ADHD, because dehydration is just going to increase the things that ADHD kind of struggles with. And so, if you have both going on, it's going to be really challenging for you to do certain things, such as remember things and concentrate and all these different things. Plus, have some different side effects as well. Now, I want to say I am not a doctor, not at all, but I am going to use some different scientific articles from different doctors and different scientific studies to show you how bad dehydration can get. And trust me, it's bad. I've been dehydrated before. I've experienced a lot of the symptoms I'm about to go over with you before, and they are not fun. Not fun at all. And I know, people would say, oh, dehydration is not fun anyway. But I can tell you from firsthand experience how some of these symptoms are, and they are pretty devastating. And the other thing is about it, if you have ADHD and then you get dehydrated, then it can be worse because now you're dealing not only with the dehydration symptoms, but you're dealing with what ADHD struggles with generally. And so cognitively, those can be really bad together. So let's get into talking about dehydration. Now, before I do, go ahead and click the subscribe button for me if you're on YouTube or listen on a podcast app. If you're on YouTube, press the notification bell as well. And if you're on YouTube, leave a like and a comment. If you're on a podcast app, leave a rating and a comment. Okay, let's get into the information. Let's talk about dehydration. Now, if you don't know what dehydration is, then it's the point to where your body loses enough water that it's not able to function the way it should. You need water in your body to function the way that it should, and that's for muscles, brain, everything, right? You need water in your body. So if you are not getting enough water, then your body gives you these signals and signs of, hey, I'm not getting enough water. You should probably drink some water. And if you ignore those signs, it can be really bad, and that's when dehydration kicks in. And so if you've never been dehydrated, again, not fun. I've been dehydrated. It is one of the worst experiences I've ever had. And put me actually in the hospital when I got dehydrated. And I look back at it and be thankful now, but man, every time I have been dehydrated, it has not been a good thing. So I'm going to look at this article from Medical News. Now, Medical News has to say, it says studies have shown that cognitive function declines at mild water loss of around 2% body water loss. And what that means is that when you use 2% of the water in relation to your body weight, then things start to go downhill. And that's not good. And so, as though this can be affected by individual differences relating to fitness levels and dehydration tolerance. These include poor concentration, increased reaction times, short-term memory issues, and negative mood changes. Such a mild loss of water from the body can occur simply as a result of routine daily activities, especially in adults who consume only around 1 liter of water or 4 cups worth a day. Other physiological symptoms of mild dehydration that affect the brain can include lightheadedness, dizziness, headache, nausea, and fatigue. Many daily headaches can be attributed to mild dehydration. Thus, the factors may play a role in reduced cognitive function when dehydrated. So when you look at all that, that's a lot of things that dehydration does. Just the fact that you have so many different symptoms and you may not even know, and the fact that you may have this mild headache that you get during the day and not really realize that you're getting dehydrated. And if you're just out in the sun, you may just think, oh, the sun's beating down. I may just have this little headache because I'm in the sun so long, whatever, not realizing that you are dehydrated. Now, even when you're out in the sun and you're drinking like soda, like whatever soda you want to drink, or tea or coffee, not sure if you're drinking coffee really outside and it's super hot, but the fact is all these things dehydrate you. So if you're doing that, if you're outside drinking these different soft drinks or whatever, and you are just out in the sun, you also need to drink some water too. You need to have, if you want to have one, you need to have both. Now, I don't recommend drinking soda anyway because I think it's really bad for you. But in general, if you are and you decide to enjoy a soda, just make sure that you also have water out there as well. Something to get you rehydrated. And the thing about it is with all these different effects, and you're looking at this poor concentration, increased reaction times, short term memory loss or memory issues, negative mood changes. And these are all things that ADHD deals with, or some of these things ADHD deals with as well. So when you have both going on, you can imagine what is going to happen. It's not going to be good because now you're not only dealing with everything you have to deal with ADHD, whatever your challenges are with that, now you're dealing with all these other things included from dehydration. And so when you look at it and you're looking at both and you're like, wow, these things have some of the similar symptoms. And I could just be thinking, oh, it's my ADHD. Or, oh, it's part of ADHD that is going on here. Instead, it's part of dehydration. And you need to really think about that before you go out and are in the weather and out enjoying the sun and exercising outside or you doing yard work. Just try to be aware that if you're doing all these things, that these different things that are going on because of dehydration, you've been outside for 5 hours in the sun, haven't drank any water, you've been drinking soda all day and you haven't really come back in, and then you went out and did a whole bunch of sports and surfing and all this kind of stuff and came back and were just exhausted or having headaches or having short-term memory issues or just all these different things going on. And some of these things that they talked about here, which is headache, nausea, fatigue, I've had all of those when I've had dehydration. And it's not even fun because you may get to the point where you are so dehydrated you come and just like pass out on the floor. And I don't mean pass out literally, but you just come and just lay down because you're feeling so bad. Your head hurts, you're nauseous, you don't feel like getting up or doing anything. You're just like, oh, it feels so bad. And I've been to that place where I was just feeling so bad because of dehydration because I was really dehydrated. I went out, well, I made the mistake. I went out and ran in like 95-degree weather, and I was sprinting in 95-degree weather. And this is when I was younger, not now, because I wouldn't do this now. But I was sprinting, and I sprinted for a long time in this 95-degree heat and got back and wondered why I felt really bad. And it was because I was really dehydrated. I wasn't drinking enough water outside. I wasn't drinking enough water, throughout the day or throughout the day before. And so my body was just dehydrated. And especially since I sweated or I sweat so much when I was sitting there doing all those things outside and sprinting outside and being outside and exercising, all this kind of stuff, I was just completely dehydrated. Dehydrated to the point to where I was like, I just feel awful. And that brings me to another point. Heat exhaustion is a real thing. Like if you have never been to the point to where you are dealing with heat exhaustion, then I would say avoid it at all costs. Because not only you're dehydrated, but when you get to the point to where you're heat exhausted, what that means is that you're dehydrated to a level to where your body is really kicking into, hey, you are about to be super fatigued. You are super fatigued, and I am really dehydrated. And so now you're dealing with some of the worst side effects. Your side effects that you get from dehydration are going to be worse when you are dealing with heat exhaustion. And that's what happened when I was outside running in the 95-degree weather. I came back and I was heat exhausted and was dealing with heat exhaustion. I'm not sure if heat exhaust is a term, but I was dealing with heat exhaustion, right? And it was just awful. It was just awful, like the worst thing. And I've not only had it once, but I think I've had heat exhaustion like 3 times. And once I found out what it was the first time, the second and third time, I was like, oh, I've been outside and been doing too much and haven't drinking enough water for the day. And now I'm kind of reaping the not rewards, but the negative aspects of it. And I'm going to have to really work to get myself back up to the correct level, drink some water, stay out of the sun, all this kind of stuff. So you don't ever want to get to the heat exhaustion level. That is really bad. And then if you are really, really, really dehydrated, you might start having hallucinations or you might start seeing things that aren't there. And I know some medical conditions have this, but if you are super, dehydrated, if you ever seen like the Bugs Bunny cartoon or Daffy Duck, where they're out and they're seeing a mirage out in the mirage and seeing this oasis out in the middle of the desert because they are so exhausted from heat and they are so to the point to where they're like, I am super, super, super dehydrated, they start seeing like an oasis, or they start looking at their friend and, imagine they have a hot dog right there, at a restaurant or whatever, and they're thinking, oh, hey, my friend's got a hot dog in their hand. And so you may not know how that is, but if you see, if you ever seen those cartoons, and cartoons are funny, right? They're funny to see all these things because you're like, oh, it's funny, but really, if you get to the point to where you are super, super dehydrated, you may start seeing things. And it's because your body is trying to send you a signal, hey, you need help right now. If you get to the point to where you're starting to see things because of being out in the heat so long, not because of a medical condition, right? Some mental illnesses do the same thing. But if you never have any of those things and you start seeing things, you probably need to go to the hospital. And because it may be that you are just dehydrated to a intense point, or just crazy dehydrated, right? And so at that point you need to seek medical attention and see if someone can help you out, and just tell the hospital what's going on, tell whoever is helping you what's going on, and see if you can get back to just functioning normal at that point, because you need some severe water intake at that point. And maybe when you go to the hospital, I guess they try to just give you something to get you hydrated back up, whatever that is. Saline solution, I think, is what it is, because I've had it before, and I think they just give it to you, and it basically just pumps stuff into you to get you back hydrated rather than you having to drink a whole bunch of water. You can probably ask a medical professional what they give you when you're really dehydrated. Now, I've had it before, but I don't remember because I've been or have not been dehydrated in a long time. And so just ask somebody that actually does that for a living, I guess. But the point is that it is just an awful experience if you actually have to go through it. Now, another study says this. It says habitual high volume 2 liter day drinkers were asked to lower their water intake to 1 liter a day, and low volume 1.2 liter a day drinkers were asked to increase their drinking to 2.5 liters a day for 3 days. It says the results of the study show that increased their daily water intake scored better on mood scales and physiological scales, including lowered sleepiness, less thirst, and confusion. Those that decreased their daily water intake scored worse on mood ratings, as well as being thirstier and less calm. And thus, increasing daily water intake, be it a few more glasses per day than normal, can lead to longer lasting emotional arousal and energy changes associated with the positive effect of cognition. On the other hand, regularly consuming less than 1.2 liters a day and being dehydrated is associated with worse cognitive effects in everyday function. So, this is an experiment or a study that has done this, and they found that if you consume the right amount of water, then it's going to help with different things in the cognitive aspect. So, I found that very interesting. That just making sure that you drink enough water can have a profound effect on how your cognitive abilities work, or how successful you are at these cognitive activities. It's just crazy, right? That having the right amount of water can do so much. Like, just crazy that, hey, if I drink enough water, that my body functions better and I have better cognition. But the fact that, everybody I think knows that, hey, I need water, I know that it's good for the body or whatever, but the fact that it affects so much in your cognitive abilities, that it's really worth looking into to make sure that you're getting enough water. It's great if you want to drink a soda. And like I said, I'm not a real advocate of, hey, drink soda, because I think soda is really bad for you. But the fact of the matter is that if you're drinking, soda and tea and coffee and all these things really dehydrate you, you need to be aware of that, and then aware, okay, if I drink any of these things, I need to drink more water. I need to get more water in my system. And a lot of times people will say, oh, I'm so thirsty. Oh, what can I drink? Oh, I'll go grab a soda. And that doesn't help, because the soda dehydrates you more. And so you may need to drink something like water or maybe even a sports drink, right? Like a sports drink. A sports drink will also help. It gets the electrolytes in you and all that kind of stuff. So, but the point is, you need to have something more than just soda, coffee, tea, those kind of things. You need to have water in your daily intake of things that you drink because it can help you with all the different things that you might struggle with ADHD, and not really saying, hey, it is like a cure for everything that you deal with ADHD. I'm just saying that if you're struggling already with short term memory issues, then being dehydrated is just going to increase some of those short term memory issues and may just make everything feel worse in that case. And so, if you can do something really simple like drink enough water and have that in your body, then at least you're not suffering the short term memory issue side effect from dehydration. And then you can kind of work with ADHD, work with the things that you deal with ADHD in the normal capacity of that instead of having it compounded with dehydration side effects. Now, not everything is, hey, drink more water, drink more water, drink more water, because you can drink too much water. And there's a really simple way to see if you're drinking water, enough water, and if you're drinking too much water. When you go to the bathroom, if it's clear when you do that number one process, then you're drinking too much. If it's really dark, dark, dark color, then you're not drinking enough water. You don't want to get to the super dark, dark, dark color. You want to kind of keep an eye on it and see if it gets to the point to where it's kind of, hey, light yellow kind of thing. But that is definitely TMI for this. And it is just an easy way to tell if you're dehydrated. And that is the easiest way to tell. Now, if you're also really thirsty and really like, hey, I'm really thirsty, I'm parched. I guess they say parched still. I'm parched. I need something to drink. Then that is also an indication that you might be dehydrated or you're definitely needing some water. But both those methods are good and easy ways to tell if you are needing water or thirsty or whatever. Obviously, if you're out in the sun and a lot of heat, then you're definitely going to need to drink some water throughout the day. Now, here's what Psychology Today has to say. And this is where I got the term parched from, because they say it here. They say years of research have found that when we're parched, we have more difficulty keeping our attention focused. Dehydration can impair short-term memory function and the recall of long-term memory, the ability to perform mental arithmetic, like calculating whether or not you'll be late for work if you hit the snooze for another 15 minutes, and is compromised when your fluids are low. Now that's interesting because here it says if you are trying to figure out why you are still hitting the snooze alarm and are not having good time management, it may be because you're dehydrated. So think about that. You're already not good at time management generally if you have ADHD. And then now you are compounding dehydration, bad time management on top of that. So you see how this kind of works, that if you drink enough water that you won't be experiencing these different things. And this also says right here that it can affect your long-term memory loss too. Long-term memory too. And you might have trouble recalling things that are in your long-term memory. And so I find that very interesting because I knew it was dealing with short-term memory, but long-term memory, I didn't even think about that. And the fact that it can affect your long-term memory, you may be outside, you may be somewhere, and you're trying to remember something that's really important, but you're dehydrated and then you can't. So again, drinking that right amount of water can help you function in these different things. And I thought this was very eye-opening. Just look at what Psychology Today had to say. And I think it brings up a very good point about what happens when you are dehydrated. Now, another thing Psychology Today goes over is sleeping, and that you lose water when you sleep. And maybe some people know this, but I didn't know if everybody knew this, so I figured I would go ahead and look at what they say. And what it says here is, over a typical 24-hour period, the longest spell most of us go without fluid intake is 6 to 8 hours we spend sleeping. That would be good if I got 6 to 8 hours, but a lot of times I don't. It says sleeping is hardly the kind of activity that you sweat over, but that doesn't mean you're not losing water during the night. With every breath, you expel moisture, and the cumulative effect of a night's sleep is to dry out. And so I think that's pretty interesting, pretty eye-opening, that even though you drink water, enough water the previous day, that over the night you're going to just expel water and lose water in in your body. And so when you get up in the morning, you're going to have to start the water intake all over again for the next day. It's just very interesting that maybe people didn't know that as you sleep, you're just losing water and water and water. And you're like, well, why? I drank enough water yesterday. What's going on? Why am I dehydrated today? And just realize as you sleep, you're still losing water all the time. Every time you go to sleep, every time you spend that 6 to 8 hours. And again, I wish I could get 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Sometimes I do, but a lot of times I do not. But if you are out there getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep and have ADHD, you are awesome, and it's a great accomplishment for sure, because I know a lot of people out there with ADHD do not have the greatest sleeping schedules and have a lot of issues going to sleep. So hopefully you get that water intake going. And again, if you have that water intake going, that you may sleep better as well. Okay, moving on to the last article that I want to talk about, and it's going to be from Psych Congress, and it's really just one thing that they found that is very similar to another article that I've already gone over. But it says researchers found that athletes who lost fluid equal to 2% of their weight took a hit to their cognition. Even this mild to moderate level of dehydration, the loss of 2 pounds for someone who weighs 100 pounds, or 4 pounds for someone who weighs 200 pounds, led to attention problems and impaired decision making, according to a report in the journal Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise. And then it goes on to say, it says, in particular, dehydration led to impairment in tasks requiring attention, motor coordination, executive function, which includes things like map recognition, grammatical reasoning, mental math, proofreading, for an example. And so I thought that's really interesting that it said specifically executive function. It says specifically things like requiring attention, motor coordination. Maybe if you are really clumsy sometimes, that it may just be that you're clumsy, but it may be that if you are super dehydrated or dehydrated, you may be clumsier. And it even says map recognition. So if you're trying to find something on a map, you may not be able to find it because you're super dehydrated and you're having trouble really trying to figure out where things are on the map. And you might just be one of those people who has an old school map where you don't have your GPS talking to you, right? And you have to figure it out old school. You have to take out the map and look at everything and figure out, okay, this location, try to figure out where every place is and the distance, all that kind of stuff. I know that's old school. I know that probably people out there don't do that anymore, but when I grew up, you had to use a map. You didn't have a lot of GPS stuff, and that will tell you kind of a little bit about my age. But if you're looking at that, you may not be able to recognize the places you're trying to go to or get to because you're just dehydrated. Or proofreading. So if you're in school and you're trying to proofread something that you have, tried to turn in as an assignment, and this is a final paper that you got to do and you're trying to proofread it, and everything on your computer is just not working, and you have to go through and proofread it yourself, and you want to proofread it anyway after you run it through those proofreading programs to see if it makes sense. And you'll have issues with that, or should have issues with that if you're dehydrated. So all these things are coming together and seeing that dehydration is really bad. I know people are probably like, well, yeah, dehydration is really bad, but I don't know if they knew that it affected all these different things that you may be experiencing because you are dehydrated, and how it can have some of the same side effects as you're dealing with ADHD. And so it just compounds. And so I thought this information was good. I thought it was interesting, and I thought it would be something that people would be interested in hearing about, especially since it is getting to summertime or that hot time of year, at least where I am. Now, if it's not that time, your hot time of year where you are, then that's okay. Hopefully you have a hot time of year sometime in the future, and this will apply then. All right, with all that being said, I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. I hope you have enjoyed the information. I hope that has been helpful to you, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day. Thank you for listening.
And it's a beautiful thing too.